So just a little bit about me. I am originally from Jacksonville, Florida. I grew up there. The part of Jacksonville I'm from is about 3 hours away from the Space Coast. So I didn't really grow up near the industry. I didn't grow up seeing launches or anything like that. I was, I hated math as a kid. And so a career in aerospace was never something I really envisioned for myself when I was young. But as I got older and when I was in high school, I got a really, really lucky opportunity. My mom, who you can see there in the middle, is my mom and my dad and I um, at my associate's degree graduation. My mom, though, when I was in high school, was looking to try to find space camp scholarships because I grew up in a poor working class family. Nobody in my family had gone to college. Nobody really that I didn't know anyone really other than my teachers that had gone to college. That wasn't really a thing in the area I grew up. But my whole life, even though I wasn't good at math and I didn't think I could actually be a scientist or anything like that, I always wanted to go to space camp because I was always a space nerd. I thought that, astronauts were so cool, that space, the stars, everything was so neat. I just didn't think I was smart enough to be able to do any of that. And so my mom was looking for space camp scholarships when she found, and I've still never been to space camp, but she found this program called NASA Inspire, which at the time it was a program, an online program that existed for high school students. And every summer, if you did enough assignments, so you would do all these online, almost like homework assignments, but they were all NASA themed. So they were on physics and um, rocketry and just real basic algebra type level math. But if you did enough, you could apply for these summer opportunities. And each summer, it was something different depending on what year in school you were. So I found out about this program when I was a junior. And so I applied, I got into the online program, and then I applied for the summer opportunity. Well, for juniors and seniors, that summer opportunity was a short 8-week internship at the NASA center nearest to you. So for me, that was Kennedy Space Center. And I was super, super lucky. I was one of 6 students picked to intern that summer. I won't lie, when I first found out I got an internship, I had started deciding at that point in my high school career that I wanted to try and work in the space industry, even though I wasn't good at math. I mean, literally, I took summer classes in between my 8th and ninth grade years to catch up because I was so far behind in math. I always got good grades in math, but I didn't go to the best schools. So I was really behind when I got to high school at where I should have been in math. So when I was in 10th grade and then going into 11th, I decided I kind of want to try, but I really have to start liking math. My math teacher at the time would joke, he's like, "Are you going to be a mathless physicist? Like, if you want to do this, you have to start liking math." So it was a really big thing for me, a big mental block that I had to kind of overcome because there was nothing saying I couldn't do math. I was a smart kid, and math is, it's just numbers. But for me, that was a really big challenge because I never really excelled in math, and I always kind of was told, "Oh, that's okay. You're good at English, you're good at writing, you're good at all the other things. It's okay if you're not good at math." So I never really had anyone to try to um, push me in that until I was in high school. And I'm glad I had a couple teachers that helped push me because I wouldn't have been able to do this. But when I found out when I was going to NASA and I had this internship, at first I was so excited. I had just kind of gotten over my math fear. And then I saw what my assignment was going to be. And I was going to be in the prototype development lab doing 3D modeling, doing mechanical engineering. And at that time, I only thought of engineers as being people on trains. I didn't know I never had met an engineer in my entire life. And I had no idea what an engineer did. I had no idea what 3D modeling was. To me, I was like, I can't even like draw a straight line with a ruler. How am I going to 3D model? And I had a terrible, terrible case of imposter syndrome where you feel like you're not qualified and you're not going to do well. And it's something I still occasionally battle with today. But I was convinced I was going to go to NASA and they were either going to kick me out or they were going to make me the coffee intern or something and just run around and take people's coffee orders. Thankfully, I had a really great mentor. In my very first day, he started showing me how to do the 3D modeling software. And um, we did my first design. It was really simple, a basic extrusion with a couple little chamfers in it. But he showed me how to do it. I did it. And then he didn't tell me, but he had it done on a 3D printer that night. So the next day I came in and saw something I had designed printed, and it was a real thing. And I decided right then and there I was going to be a mechanical engineer and I was going to work at Kennedy Space Center. And I'm telling you all this now because this helped me with my next part of the journey, which was applying for colleges, because that was my singular focus. So I ended up going to the University of North Florida, and it was not my first pick school. It was not my second. It was not my third, fourth, or fifth. It was my fallback school. When I decided I wanted to be a mechanical engineer and work at NASA, I applied for Georgia Tech, Florida Tech, and some other big name schools. I was lucky I got into all the schools I applied for, but I did not have the money to make it work. And I had a full ride to the University of North Florida, so I decided to go there. The University of North Florida did not have an aerospace degree program. It did not have any aerospace research. Um, Nothing, just basic mechanical engineering. So I decided, well, I'm at this school. I have to be at this school because I can't afford to go anywhere else. So I'm going to have to kind of make my own way because I am going to work at NASA as a mechanical engineer. Nothing's going to stop me. So I got super involved in my academics and in opportunities at the university. So I got involved with the Society of Women Engineers. I got involved and was president of our chapter of the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to do my own research. I'm going to try to come up with an idea for something and see if I can fly it in zero gravity. And I won't lie, everyone at the university thought I was crazy. I had a teacher that sponsored me, and he was the one who told me, he was the one who knew and told me about something that Mr. Simmons had done, which inspired my project. Um, but I mean, I won't lie. When I told my the director of engineering at the time that I was going to do this, and I asked if I got accepted to fly, would they help finance me to build my idea? And he literally laughed at me and said, "Yeah, we'll talk about it if you get accepted." Nobody thought it would happen. And so I worked on this idea and this proposal and wrote it up and sent it to NASA. Um, I had one teacher that saw it after I submitted it. It said that I was an embarrassment to the school and that it would never be accepted. Well, I got a call. This was about 3 days before Christmas. It was right before Christmas. And it was from the NASA people. And they told me, at first it sounded like it was a rejection, but they told me that I was going to be the second school in the entire history of the program that got accepted on its first ever proposal. So it was, I cried, I screamed. I was like, are you kidding me? I'm going to fly something in zero gravity. And all it was at this point was an idea. It was just an idea in my head because I was really, really driven to want to do stuff in space. And so then after Christmas, I go back. My teacher, who was the one teacher who thought like this girl might, be onto something. So he was my sponsor. He was excited. I go back and the school did not want to fund it. They did not want to fund it. So then I was like, well, now I wrote this proposal, but now I need to build it. I'm going to need help to build it. But once you offer people a free ride in zero G, they'll come and help. I didn't have a problem finding people to help me. But then we had to fundraise. and I was, doing radio interviews. I was on the news. And it's bringing a lot of publicity to our university, and they relented. I got some money, but it definitely wasn't enough to make it happen. And so I did. I had to fundraise and was able to build our prototype. It was the concept was eventually for a CubeSat, but this was a larger scale model. It was for a bioreactor to study bone cell cultures in zero gravity. And we wanted to test different materials and pharmaceuticals to try to help with bone density loss that you see in space. So we had a small scale version without, you can't fly any biomedical type things, animals, cultures, things like that on these zero G flights. So we had a prototype of what that system would look like, just minus the biology component. And so you see us flying over there. We made the trip happen. I didn't have to go into debt over it or anything. And then it kind of blossomed from there. I had students at the university that were doing model rockets. Some of us sent up a balloon, which you see in the middle. That's our mascot, Ozzy the Osprey. Got my degree in mechanical engineering and I minored in math. And so when I graduated, I was really lucky. I had that singular focus of wanting to work in the space industry. I applied for SpaceX, interviewed there, didn't get a job, but I had gotten a job, 2 offers. I had one in Texas with a small company, and then one for Lockheed Martin on the Orion spacecraft. And it was for a test engineer. I did not know what a test engineer did. I was like, but it sounds fun. It's working on a spacecraft. So I'm going to go do that. And test engineering isn't exactly something you major in. So I figured, well, I just went through this whole time in engineering school making my own path. So we'll figure this out. So before I talk a bit about my job and what I do, I want to make sure everyone knows what Orion is. So Orion is a deep space spacecraft. It's designed to go to the moon and to Mars. And there are several components to the spacecraft. So you see over on the left, that is what's known as the crew module, where the astronauts would sit. You've got over here, I don't know if you guys can see my cursor, but you got windows over here. There's a side hatch on the side where the astronauts go in and out. You've got a heat shield on the bottom, parachutes and stuff set up in the top. You've got this piece right here called the crew module adapter. It essentially, it's extremely self-explanatory. It adapts the crew module to this piece here, which is the service module. It's built by the European Space Agency and then given to us. And we do a little bit of testing with it. But in here, this holds all of the fuel, the propellant, the main engines on here, potable water, the gases that keep the crew module pressurized, all of that's in here. You don't really want those tanks and things in the crew module because high pressures and things can be quite explosive. So they're a little bit of ways away here in the surface module. So Orion launches as that one unit on top of the spacecraft. And then when it comes back, right before it comes back, it separates from the service module. This part falls into the ocean, well, burns up and falls to the ocean. And the crew module returns for a water landing here on Earth. So that's Orion, and I wanted it to kind of show you some of those systems and its capabilities because I've worked on some of those. So when I started working on Orion in 2015, it looked nothing like this. When I started, not too long after I started, the crew module structure came in. It was just a green piece of metal, essentially, with some holes for the windows and some holes for some tubing in, and nothing else. But I've been super lucky. I've got to work on a ton of different parts of the spacecraft. One of the areas I specialized in, well, a few of them, I specialized in the environmental control and life support systems on the spacecraft. So I worked with the pressure control system, which is pretty much the system that keeps the crew module pressurized. Obviously, if it leaked and went to vacuum, that would not be a good day for the astronauts. The potable water system, or your drinking water, the PGW system, which is propylene glycol and water mixture. It's almost identical to the antifreeze that is in your car, if you have a car or if your parents have a car. We even get it from AMSOIL, the same place that pretty much everyone gets their oils and lubricants for their vehicles from. And I also worked on the windows, and my biggest baby, I guess you can call it, because it needed a lot of work, was the side hatch. So I became the kind of local subject matter expert on side hatch testing and side hatch operations. So it was a lot, but it was a lot of fun too. And recently I started doing project management. I only just in the past couple weeks have totally gotten away from test engineering as a whole, but it's almost been almost 6 years of testing the Artemis 1 spacecraft, and I started testing the Artemis 2 spacecraft. Artemis 2 will carry crew and will carry a woman and a man back to the moon, which is super exciting. And so I want to talk a little bit more about testing of Orion. So here in these two pictures, you can see the Orion, and it's kind of hard to tell unless I were to kind of point it out, but it's, if you look up, it is in a big giant metal dome, and that dome is at Plumbrook in Ohio. So last year, right before Thanksgiving, we shipped this entire spacecraft on the Super Guppy, and we spent from November of 2019 until mid-March of 2020 testing the spacecraft in their thermal vacuum chamber. And I was one of the certified test conductors that was running that test. So there was a few of us that were mechanical test conductors, and then there were some that were electrical test conductors that we ran 24/7. We worked on Thanksgiving, we worked on Christmas, we worked New Year's. There was no breaks as this test experienced the highs and the colds and the vacuum of space. So we started off with just this little teeny tiny compared to the whole thing structure. Then we populated it, we built it until we finally got complete. So these pictures are pretty recent. The one on the left was one that was taken by a Lockheed or NASA photographer. That is Orion finished. That is what it looks like. Everything's stacked up, everything's on it, all the everything's buttoned up. So what this picture was them lifting and moving the spacecraft out of the what we call fast cell, final assembly and test. And that's where we have been doing work on the spacecraft for a little over a year. And I was really fortunate. I got to, even though I had accepted a new role doing project management, still on Orion, but I still got to close the hatch for the very last time. It was the last operation we really did before it was lifted out and given to NASA. And so that was a really cool experience for me, being kind of the last person to, at least on the Lockheed Martin side, to do an operation on the spacecraft. I've got to do a lot of things with this. And so you can see a little bit on these slides. I'll kind of point them out. I've got to meet Marilyn Houston over here. That was our former CEO, also one of the most powerful women in the world. I've got to participate in community events. Over here in the corner, I was part of a panel talk back in my hometown of Jacksonville. I was on another panel talk over here with astronaut Nicole Stott, which was really cool. I mean, like, being able to share a stage with an astronaut is really neat. And she and I have actually become well acquainted since. I've got to see other missions happen. So over here, was with the Icon mission, which they had like a rocket strapped to a plane that they were doing some testing with. And the top left over here, I watched the launch abort test, the last launch abort test for Orion. Pretty close. I was at one of the closest spots. I was picked as the only person from my site that got to go with like the big wigs. And so astronaut and JSC director at the time, Ellen Ochoa, she was the first Hispanic astronaut or first Hispanic woman in space. And a whole bunch of other just awesome people. We got to watch the launch together from a pretty close uh, distance. And I also have been really, really lucky that Lockheed Martin, just as a company, has been very supportive of me and doing things that I want. So over on the far left, this past year, I ran for office as if I didn't have enough to do. And I ran for my county's soil and water conservation district. And my opponent dropped out, so I won without really a fight. And so now I've been doing that because not only am I very passionate about space, but I'm also passionate about our environment. And I think that really ties into my passion for space in the sense that I think Earth is a fantastic planet and we should do what we can to protect and conserve it. So I've kind of wanted to make sure I talk about the challenges and things that I've gone through because I want people to know that whatever challenges that you are going through, it could be similar to mine, it could be totally different, but I definitely believe in the ability to persevere through anything that life throws at you because I definitely did not have an easy journey getting here, but I had that singular focus that this is what I wanted to do and I was able to achieve it. So being the first person in my family that went to college, we didn't really talk about that too much, but that was a challenge. I didn't know. I had to figure out how do I apply for colleges? What do they need? How am I going to pay for these application fees and stuff? Um, and just trying to figure out like what majors do I want to look at, what schools are good for those. It was hard because I didn't really have a lot of guidance there and had to figure a lot of that on my own. And then being a woman in engineering, I mean, even in engineering school, I faced a lot of people not believing in me. And so I was the only woman on the team. I was the first young person on the team. And I was younger at the time, I was younger by everyone by 19 years. So it was definitely a shift for me to try and relate to people that were old enough to be my parents. In some cases, grandparents, not on my direct team, but with some of the other people I worked with. And for me, the biggest help there was finding a mentor. Thankfully, my manager, my manager, I think started around the same time as me. He was new to our team, and I was new, and he saw that I was not that I was struggling so much, but he could tell I felt out of place, and he connected me with a woman that he had worked with years past, and having somebody who could relate to being the only young person and the only woman was really helpful, and she was able to give me um, advice on what to do to help make myself feel more comfortable. If I didn't have that internship opportunity, I don't know that I ever would have gone into engineering. I don't think it was something I ever would have thought for myself. And of course, hating math. That was a big, kind of like being the only woman and the only young person on my team. Hating math was a big mental hurdle for myself to have to get over. And I learned some lessons along the way. I very much truly believe, because I've been in lots of bad jobs and bad situations, that you learn from every experience you go through, whether it's an enjoyable experience or not. So one of the things I've learned is about imposter syndrome and how to try to combat that, because I have experienced that a lot. I think most people do at some point in their lives. And that's so now that I can recognize that, whenever it creeps back into my head, I know kind of how to combat that. I've learned the importance of finding a mentor and also being a mentor. So when I was early in my career, I definitely would not have been a person that could have been a mentor. But I found a mentor, and then I went through my challenges, and now I've been able to mentor people. I've mentored a few interns, I've mentored new hires, and I that is one of the biggest joys of mine is being able to be mentored and mentor others. Again, kind of like I was saying in when I was talking about my desire to study aerospace and do some kind of space project. Don't be afraid to try something new or start something new. I think you guys already kind of have that one. Don't give up. I truly believe you can set anything, you could do anything you set your minds to. And kind of the last lesson is don't let anybody make you feel like you don't belong. I experienced that when I was in school. I experienced more directly when I was in school. When I was working, um, I felt like I didn't belong, not because the people didn't made me feel that way. I just felt different. I felt like I was um, kind of the fish out of water because I was so much younger than everyone else and because I was a woman. But I mean, I feel like that team is my family now. And it wasn't um, something I would have felt right away, but I'm really glad that I found a mentor and was able to connect with the team, and now we just it truly feels like one big happy family.